Irreverent, entertaining, cool. You're listening to LA Talk Radio.
You're listening to All Things Therapy with Lisa Tahir, only on LA Talk Radio.
Hello there. Welcome to All Things Therapy. I am your host, Lisa Tahir. I'm a licensed clinical social worker practicing as an intuitive psychotherapist. I'm certified in EMDR and Reiki. I have physical office spaces in both Los Angeles and New Orleans. However, I work with clients worldwide via Skype and by phone. So please reach out to me and contact me to schedule sessions if you're interested in being a guest on this show or to advertise. And my website and the way to do that is through nolatherapy.com, which is the abbreviation for New Orleans, Los Angeles therapy.com. I started this show because I truly believe that all of our contributions matter, and we co-create with others to manifest and make the things that we want to see happen in our lives. And I believe that raises the vibration of our planet, individual by individual. So that's why I started this show and why I invited my guest today to come on the show. I am with Tisha Morris. She is founder of the Earth Home School of Feng Shui, where you can take online courses to be a certified practitioner. She has an online course coming up in September that we'll be talking about towards the end as well. So Tisha is an interior designer. She's an intuitive energy healer. She has a product line of essential oils that's a smudge spray for your home to clear spaces, which we're going to talk about also during the show. And she has authored 4 books. She's a writer for various publications, a blogger. She has her own podcast, and she's a yoga instructor. Then on top of all this, in a former life, she was a practicing attorney, which I'm curious to hear more about. So Tisha, come on, and I'd like to welcome you with being with us today.
Thank you so much, Lisa. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you. You're welcome. So I know you use space as a conduit for healing, utilizing the vehicle of feng shui. So I wonder if you could tell us more about that or wherever you would like to start today.
Absolutely. And you said it exactly perfect in that space is a conduit for healing. And when I came into the healing arts, yoga was kind of what I call my gateway drug into it. And then I started doing energy work, and which had amazing results. But then I started working in people's homes, I worked in my own home first, and started to see the intricate relationship between our own energy and our home's energy, and how it could be such a powerful conduit for healing, because everything in our mind, our body, and our home is all the same energy on some level. And so when you work in a space, which is in the 3D world, which is in the physical world, as opposed to you're a therapist, so you're working in people's minds, which is kind of this nebulous world that you can't really see. Yeah. But when you see it in a space, reflected back at you, it can be a really transformational process for people.
Yeah, I like how you talk about feng shui being the psychology of spaces, because in my work I do, dealing with the interior aspects of mind, and not something tangible, but one space is, I think, a tangible reflection of our minds, of our spirits. So can you talk more about what is feng shui very basically, and how does that energy transform and energize our lives?
Absolutely. There is, just like you said, all of our good, our bad, and our ugly is in our house somewhere. And so it's, as a feng shui practitioner, I go into spaces and then can find those little Achilles heel, and then we move the energy around, and it affects those areas of our life. lives. And so with feng shui, the textbook definition of feng shui is living in harmony with earth energy, which kind of sounds a little Pollyannic. But it's actually very doable and actually easily accomplished in working with the principles of feng shui. My personal definition of feng shui is creating supportive environments. Oftentimes our spaces are hindrances to us, as opposed to supporting the life that we want to be living. And so that's kind of my approach to feng shui is as you love every square inch of your home, it being a mirror of yourself, that's ultimately a form of self-love.
It is. It is a form of self-love. I like how you say that. So, I know as an energy healer, as an intuitive, you talk in your work as well about seeing into the unseen world and utilizing even your dreams and your work. So I'm not sure what direction you want to take. I'm curious about that. And I'm also curious about your book having to do with decorating with the 5 elements. And so I wonder if you would pick a direction.
Sure. Okay. Let's talk about decorating with the 5 elements, because that's kind of segue to what I was just saying. When I started my feng shui practice, I was kind of working with that definition of, the definition of feng shui of being in harmony with the earth's energy. And I kind of struggled with that definition until I fell in love with the 5 elements and realized it's actually the 5 elements that is the bridge between us and nature. And really, feng shui is actually based in Taoism, as being its like parent umbrella. And so Taoism is all about, the oneness of everything, and the plants, the rocks, us, everything is made up of the same stuff. And that stuff is actually the 5 elements: wood, fire, earth, metal, water. And I know you can appreciate the elements because you do glass blowing, which is such a amazing connection with at least 3 of those elements: the fire, the water being the glass, and metal. Yeah. But it is, these 5 elements are the fabric of our universe, and it's in everything. It's in our bodies. This is actually what acupuncturists do. They're balancing the 5 elements within our own bodies. And our home being just another microcosm of the 5 elements, they're all doing this little dance in your space that most people are not aware of. And there's a certain dance that they prefer in certain areas of your home, and also in tandem with your own personal energy, because we each have a dominant element within us. And so we want to have a complementary energy within our space so that it feels good personal to us and the occupants in it. So in that book, I really lay that all out, explain what areas of the home were most auspicious for which element. Also, there's a nice little quiz determining what your dominant element is, and therefore how you should decorate per your own energy. So it's like a customized decorating book in a way.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, how do we determine our personal element? So that's in your book.
There's a whole chapter on. There's a lot of different approaches to that. And, it's not an exact science, although some approaches might think it is. You can go by Chinese astrology, which I find there's some truth in it. You can go by what's an ancient Chinese face reading technique, which is really cool. There's a numerology version, but there's also in my book, I have a questionnaire that kind of, once you do the questionnaire, you can see where you fall in all 5 of them. And so, because a lot of people are maybe have a 2 tied for first place. And then you can there's some correlations to one's Western astrology element, but that's definitely not an exact translation. A lot of times the fire, the Leos, the Sag, and the Aries are a lot of times show up as the fire element in the Chinese astrology, but it's not an exact translation by any means.
Do we need to have each of the 5 elements in our home? Feng Shui, I'm a beginner, so I'm asking for our listeners and for myself, like my own curiosity, can they be reflected in colors? Do we have to have a fountain? Like, how do you go into a space and approach this with your clients to help them?
Absolutely. Well, so to answer your first question, yes, you should have some of all the 5 elements in your house, and you do. You can't not. I mean, it'd be almost impossible not to, because it shows up, as you said, in colors and shapes, in exact, like I'm looking at a picture right now in my and hanging my wall of water, and so you don't have to have literal water for the water element. It can be depicted in imagery, but also in shapes and colors. And so when you go to a space that looks like, usually interior designers or decorators have an intuitive sense of the 5 elements, not realizing that's what they're doing. And so when you have a combination of those elements together, it looks really nice and it feels really nice. So balance is always a good way to go. Now, where things get a little bit more intricately balanced is, let's say we take you're like a pretty strong fire element, with probably some water second place. And so like really fiery people need some more water in their environment to kind of cool them off. And so they're not getting a little too out of balance. Usually our imbalance tends to be over whatever element you are. So fire people kind of get a little over fiery.
Yeah.
Wood people get a little too woody. Water people get a little too watery. And so you can use these elements to help balance your own energy out, particularly in your workspace. I find that where your office space or whatever space you work on, I have to work on a white table, like a metal element, because metal is what keeps my wood in control. And so if I work on a brown wood desk, I start to go crazy.
Because it's too much.
It's too much of myself.
Okay. That's so interesting. You talk also about the energy, and I hope I'm using the correct word, so correct me if not, the energy of the land, that a home or office is on, the building, the furniture, predecessors, previous inhabitants. Mm-hmm. Can you talk to us about all of that? Absolutely. You're speaking my language. Cool.
Feng Shui starts with the land, and that's what its original intent actually was, to locate auspicious sites, first for burial sites, and then they brought it to actually living spaces. And then it was actually in more of the modern history that was actually brought inside the home. So it's always been originally used for locating auspicious land. And it really still, at the core of good feng shui, bad feng shui, it always starts with the land. And in the real estate market, whether the real estate market knows this, whether it knows it or not, because the best land areas are the most expensive.
Right.
And you can see it's where feng shui translates to wind, water, and it's where the wind and the water shape the land. So it's where there's nice hills, not too steep, not too valleyed, and then near water. And so you can see throughout the country or throughout the world, it's those areas that are have the highest cost of living, or the most expensive areas where there's actually good feng shui. And so there's a lot more to the land than that, because there could be some history that's taken place that wasn't so good. All of this, I mentioned the unseen world of energy. All of this kind of creeps up into our living spaces, whether it's good or bad, and can really affect. And so, unfortunately, negative energy attracts more negative energy. And so a lot of times if there's a house, even if it's just in a random subdivision that's underneath a random water lake, kind of ley line type thing, it will actually, that's the section of their house that will be extra cluttered. It's really bizarre, how negative attracts more negative, or it might be where they tend to have more arguments in the home. And then we start to talk about predecessor energy, which is previous occupants. So patterns start to form in spaces, and those patterns get bigger and bigger and bigger over time if they're not properly cleared, which most aren't, but part of my mission is just to have every space in the world cleared on some level.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's a pretty good summary of all those topics.
So for our listeners, if you all go to Tisha's website, earthhome.tv, I really liked, I like your podcast you started in recent months, and the meditation that you have on there for soul retrieval and reclaiming aspects of ourselves from the places we have previously occupied. It was something I had never thought about in such a conscious way, though I've felt, like leaving certain living spaces in a hurry or, in an abrupt manner and such. Like, certainly we might have left aspects of ourselves. So can you talk to us about how you developed that? And I just thought it was great.
Thank you. Yes, thank you
You're
for
welcome.
bringing it up, because it is a very powerful meditation if you do it. And just for listeners, you can listen to the free version from the podcast, or the more edited, concise version. I have it for sale in my store for $4.99. So either one, the free one with more talk, or the more concise one for $4 or $5. So it is a very powerful meditation. And how this came to me, because space clearing is kind of my niche within feng shui. I've been clearing spaces. I clear my space, and then one day actually it came to me through a dream. I began to think, whoa, I'm clearing all these previous people's energies from my spaces. What about all the energy I've left in all my previous spaces?
Yeah.
Because like you said, usually when we move, we're doing it in a hurry, we're stressed. The last thing we think about is clearing we're just trying to get our crap out of there, let alone our emotional crap.
Yes.
Yes. And we're probably not even if we are conscious of, okay, I need to clean up my energy here, we're probably not in a state to be able to do that in, because we are stressed. And so we're very emotional because of the transition we're in. So I now am a lot more conscious when I leave spaces and try to go through each room. And a lot of times it's a very cathartic experience of a lot of tears shedding, depending on what happened in that space. And do try to think the space and take my energy back. But like I said, even on the best of intentions, it's hard to do that at that point of your life. So in that meditation, so of course, if you think back on like childhood homes where, goodness gracious, which is, as you know from your therapy, that's usually the time of our life that we definitely split off personalities or out of protection, and things, and really abandon aspects of ourselves. And homes are, what's so special about homes is they are containers for our memories. They are holders for our memories, as are things that we own are as well. And so it's a really sweet, almost like a cradle. It's like a cradle for ourselves. And but the flip side of that is emotions can get stuck there as well. Yeah. And so in this meditation, I guide you through going through two of your former spaces. And it's interesting. I don't know what your experiences was. It's always interesting to see what spaces pop up that you don't realize that maybe perhaps you had some old stuff still there.
Yeah, and what stood out to me as I did the meditation and then just thinking about it afterwards is you spoke about dissociation. And, when we dissociate, when typically traumatic things happen, overwhelming things happen, and how that's when, in psychotherapeutic terms, we can like lose an aspect of ourselves, or it could become fractured in the most severe case scenario. And, you talked in your meditation as you guide us to go through each room in a particular home. Is there a room? Is there a space that you may resist going into, as you're imagining it? Mm-hmm. And I thought that was really interesting, because in my work with clients, I often talk, especially when there's been trauma, where did that happen? What room? What was the scenario? And it's often hard, for my clients to even visualize and go back into that room. So I thought it was so poignant that you have listeners, tune in to where might one resist going visually, and then really enter that space and see what's there. I just think it's so, I was kind of shocked. I've never heard this before. I read a lot, I research a lot, and I was like, wow, this is like amazing to do.
Thank you. Well, like I said, it came to me through a dream. There was a house, a specific home in my life, in my adult home, is like the first home where I actually felt at home. And I had this like codependent relationship with this house. Okay. And like, I love this house so much. And a couple of years ago, it had been like 10 years since I lived there. I had a dream, and that I went back to the space, and there was still a candle burning, just a little bit of a low ember, which candles to me represent our life force. And so, and in the dream, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that candle's still burning. And I was like, I need to blow this candle out, which is basically taking back my energy. So what I find is a lot of times we think about the negative memories that we leave in spaces, but it's actually just as much of the good memories that we leave in spaces, in that we kind of see it as like the best days of our lives or the glory days, or it can't get any better than this, when it's really holding ourselves back. And, I don't know about you, but, those on the spiritual path, we're taught so much about, releasing these aspects of ourselves, but I'm seeing more, it's actually bringing back aspects that we've disassociated or lost throughout our lives, particularly in childhood. And it's actually a coming back of aspects of ourselves as much as a letting go of maybe false personas and such. It's a combination of both.
Yeah, I think that's unique about your work, that when you talk about reclaiming the aspects of ourselves, that we've lost, that we've given away, even, like, I think it's the balance to releasing and letting go is reclaiming and taking back.
Yeah, I guess that what we're talking about is ultimately like shadow work. It's our shadows, that's perceived as good, but it's actually where our gifts lie as well. Oh yeah, absolutely. And as you're talking now about your childhood home, that it sounds like has a lot of good memories that you were really attached to. I'm thinking about how Hurricane Katrina, which was 11 years ago at the end of this month, I had an interesting experience that never made sense until talking to you right now. But my family, my parents, we lost the family home due to flooding, and rebuilt over the subsequent years. But my father bought a house in Baton Rouge since we were evacuated for so long. And we were only in that house for maybe, 4 months, 5 months maximum. And the owners, the previous occupants, left all the furniture so we could just bring in clothes that we had to buy since, everything was gone. And I remember this home feeling more like home than anywhere I had ever lived. And it was so weird. And I wondered about the people that sold it to my father. So can you talk about the energy that's left, or predecessor energy? Somehow I've always thought that it's a negative vibe, but this home was so full of love and warmth, and I was only there a few months, that it didn't even make sense. Wow, that is really cool. Yeah, our relationship with homes is so interesting. I'm getting ready to post a blog post called Do You Pick Your Home, or Does Your Home Pick You? And there's such depth to the homes that we end up in. There's always a reason the homes we end up in. And you're right. It's like, for some reason, that home could have been a replica of a home in a past life, or it could be something about it just felt familiar to you for some reason. And yeah, you're right. It's like it's not, the predecessor energy is not always bad, but the reason why the bad energy gets such a bad rap is because it's dense. So what we think of as negative or bad energy is actually dense in its weight, and it's actually what's more prone to get stuck in spaces. And so trauma is a dense energy, and so the denser the energy, the more apt it is to get stuck in a house. Whereas fun, light energy just kind of swirls around, and it doesn't stick. It's just the place just feels good. So a lot of times, if there's been trauma, which may even to the point of where ghosts, where it becomes a ghost or a stuck energy in that kind of sense, it gets stuck because it's dense. But that's really cool that transitional home for you was such a safe haven during such a stressful time. What a gift.
It was. I mean, I've never felt anything like it, even since, to my recollection in this moment. It just felt like home, though there was no reason why it should logically, but there was an energy there that just felt like it just enveloped you, and you're safe, and this is like a respite from, not being in your home, not having any of your things, only being able to text because all the phone lines are, towers are down, you can't speak to anyone. It just felt like this little microcosm of a universe of safety that I will just never forget.
That's great.
Yeah. So in feng shui, to me, when I think about it, there's so many layers and it's so complex in listening to you today. And I know I read briefly about a bagua map. Can you talk to us about how you lay out spaces and feng shui them and what a bagua map is?
Yeah. So the bagua map is one of the primary tools used in feng shui. And for you guys listening, if you want a copy, you can, when you sign up for my newsletter, you can get a free copy, and it gives you instructions on how to overlay it over your floor plan. And basically you take your floor plan and draw a big tic-tac-toe board over it, and that's the bagua map. And each of those squares represent different areas of your life. So there's a wealth corner, there's a love corner, there's a career corner, creativity, and you can see where these aspects of your life fall within your home. And this gives you a really good starting point. So this is why feng shui is not a one-time application. A lot of people are like, okay, I had my home feng shuied, period. Well, it's an ongoing process because, what you're dealing with right now may be very different from what you deal with in 6 months or a year. Like, relationships might be up for you right now. And so it's like, okay, what do I need to do in my love corner? Or, I need to get my career going or get clarity. So let's take a look at my career section of my house and so forth. So it's a really nice tool instead of where to begin it. So you're not so overwhelmed with, oh my gosh, I got to tackle my entire home. And so the process that I like to use is kind of a 3-step process that I've come up with for addressing a certain area of your home, whether it's a drawer or your home office or your wealth corner. And the first step is to remove. So this is actually the decluttering phase, removing whatever is no longer necessary to still have. So anything you no longer love or use. And so removing the energy, old stagnant energy in a particular area. So what I started to see a pattern with clients is they wanted to jump to what I call step 3, which is the adding or enhancing energy. They wanted to know, where can I put a crystal? Where can I put a plant? Where can I put a fountain? Instead, it's we need to remove a bunch of crap first. No use charging a corner of clutter with a crystal. You just get more clutter.
Yes, that's great.
So removing the decluttering phase has to be first. And really, a lot of times you can just stop there. That's all that's needed is just to free up the energy through that step. And then the second step is to rearrange. So once you've moved all of a bunch of stuff, rearranging if necessary. Perhaps you need to reorganize a little bit. And then the third step would then that would be the adding or energizing step of and that can be anything from, a plant this is actually where the 5 elements come in nicely of, adding certain elements to certain areas, but also personalized items pertaining. So if there's a personal item that you associate with abundance and wealth, and that's what you would want in your wealth corner, in addition to these typical feng shui suggestions. I'm not a big fan of buying, feng shui type things, unless you just really love them. It has to be your energy and how you feel in the space is at the end of the day, the best feng shui remedy you can come up with.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing that is feeling really good is that feng shui, this doesn't have to be some huge financial investment, that a lot of it, especially the decluttering, is free. I mean, you're going through and ridding yourself of things that you don't need to raise the energy of your home or office to support you. And then the next step I'm hearing you say is rearrangement. So it sounds like you can really help people work with what they have. So it's really approachable and user-friendly, I'm hearing.
Absolutely. And a lot of people actually found objects while decluttering, even money. A lot of times you can even make money around what you declutter, in addition to the new money that will be coming in.
That's so cool. And then is the final step. So do you do this with your clients? Do you come in and spend, how do you work with them? Is it like a day? Is it several sessions? How do you approach this?
I kind of work into our blocks. I know my energy enough, and that after about 2 hours, my energy starts to wane. It usually, that covers a lot. Like it usually gives the client enough to work on for like the next 6 months.
Cool.
It's I try to break it down to where it's what's most immediate, and kind of break it down into steps that are not overwhelming. But I go in and I first find out what's not working, whether it's in their home or in their life. Always meet the client where they are as far as why they're hiring me, and then basically I go in the house almost like a little detective, and we find where this block in the house is, and then shift the energy around that. And so, wherever that block is in the home, it's also in their mind and in the body, and you shift it in one place, it's going to shift in those other places as well. Yeah.
And you also work with people, remotely, where you have them send in a blueprint or a diagram, so you don't even have to physically be in your city, correct, for your clients, for you to work with them and help them.
Absolutely, yeah. I can work up a floor plan really well, and of course, any pictures help. But when I look at someone's floor plan, it's almost like a palm reader looking at someone's palm. I can tell a lot about your life. The floor plan of a space is pretty much describes your destiny while living there. And of course, we can change that a little to a certain extent. Floor plans are pretty solid energy, but can be manipulated somewhat. And so, floor plan tells me a lot. And then pictures we can work with, for sure.
I thought that was really cool that people don't have to be in, because you're in Los Angeles, and then are you also in Nashville?
Primarily in Los Angeles. I do go to Nashville quite a bit for family and work, so yeah.
Sure, but clients can work with you anywhere just by sending you these pictures and doing a diagram, and then with your intuitive abilities, I'm feeling that you can kind of tune in to what needs to happen there as well over the phone.
Totally. It's like, I'm sure you're similar when you work with clients distantly. It's like in some ways you can actually be more intuitive because you're not, you're not distracted from, how they're perceiving what you're saying or so forth. And when I go into someone's space, sometimes it does take me a little while to get settled into my intuition because of, there's a lot of visuals going on. So working distant definitely has its pluses.
I haven't heard anyone say that, but my experience is that I do feel more intuitive on the phone or over Skype because there's that, I don't know the barrier is the right word, but there's that apparatus that it's kind of like my senses are more heightened to tune in other ways besides if someone's sitting in front of me and just that direct energy hitting me. Sometimes it takes a while for me to see through all of that to get to what's going on. But I find as well, like the phone or Skype, I can just settle in more to the energetic field and know more quickly what's happening.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. So, on your blog, one of your blogs that I really liked had to do with reverse polarity. And to me, it's about the conditioning of our pain and pleasure responses. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah. Thank you for reading that. Sometimes I kind of get on these psychological little rabbit trails that don't directly relate to feng shui, so I appreciate that people read this. This concept of reverse polarity, I think I use in the blog article example from my childhood of sitting watching TV, enjoying a fun show, and then you get handed a load of laundry to fold, and so what was pleasurable becomes painful, and so that becomes your becomes your programming. And looking back at, I think this is really common. Looking back at my childhood, it really dictated a lot of a lot of choices I made, or like you're having fun with your friends and then you come home and you're in trouble because you were late. And so what was pleasurable became painful. And then what's painful actually is you get rewarded for. So like painful of like staying up all night studying for a test that you could care less about, and you end up performing well on it, and you get awarded from your teacher and more importantly your parents. And so that painful experience actually becomes pleasurable. And so it becomes this programming that stayed with me for a long time, and very much dictated of what I majored in college. I finally got to the place where pain was too painful. And I think that was actually a big part of me switching careers. The pain I became, I think the first part of my life, I was very desensitized, AKA shut down.
Okay.
And then as I started to melt, I started feeling pain very acutely. And since then, anything that's remotely painful, and by painful, I mean like not pleasurable.
Right.
And so sitting at a desk all day shuffling papers as an attorney was immediately very painful. And so I quickly tried to figure out what I could do that was more pleasurable. And that led me on a long journey to figure that out, because it was a pretty big distance from being an attorney to working in homes and spaces. So it was not overnight journey.
Yeah, I was curious about that in reading about you being a practicing attorney and clerking for judges and on the Supreme Court, and even having a major role in some legislation, and how do you go from that when I work with a lot of attorney clients that in fact aren't really happy doing that work, mm-hmm. but the income, affords them a lifestyle that's hard to leave. And, I just was curious how you made that shift into the healing arts and spaces. And it sounds like as your life unfolded, you trusted to take those steps that I can't imagine were easy. It must have been really scary.
Yeah, it was a bit like, walking through a forest with a lantern that was barely lit, because none of it really made sense. And it took only in hindsight. Each step had some hindsight in it. But like I said, I immediately knew I clerked for 2 judges, which kind of put off the practice of law for a few years for me. And then as soon as I started practicing, I was like, oh my goodness, like this is not pleasurable at all. And immediately within like a couple of months, started trying to figure something out. And oddly enough, at that time, I was having these dreams at night of these incredibly designed spaces that like stuff that I would have never seen in a magazine. I mean, like these spaces were just the coolest things ever. And it started me to, and then I had some friends around that time that were into design school, not coincidentally. And so it kind of woke me up to that path. And so I went and got my interior design degree while practicing law during that time. And then I kind of hit a real low point because I was finishing my degree and realized that that's not what I wanted to do either. It was I had to do an internship to finish out my degree, and I was like, this is not fun either.
Yeah.
And so I was a little disheartened, to say the least. And so that, even though it was so obviously divinely led for me to do that, it still wasn't it. And so then that was around the time when I started doing yoga, because it was an outlet to try to get some peace. And then the yoga was what led me into the world of energy. And finally it all came full circle. It's what's interesting. I think that law for a lot of people of my generation or time was a place to go into when what you're going to end up doing didn't exist yet. So this is why there's a lot of attorneys that don't practice law or don't really want to be practicing law, because like me, I went into it not so much to become a lawyer, but because I didn't know what else to do. Sure. because what I was going to do didn't exist yet, or at least it didn't exist in the limited worldview that I had for myself at that time.
Yes. But life led you. And even what you're saying, I'm reflecting back on your blog, having to do with living life in reverse polarity, as far as, you listened to the messages of this discomfort that you felt as an attorney, that it sounds like kind of grew and grew. And I've seen in my work, I believe people, we can accommodate quite a bit of discomfort, and live with it begrudgingly, but not make any changes, and it's amazing to me. I've done it in my own life, so I'm not being, critical of anyone, but just, I think until we really reach a point where the pain outweighs the fear that we have to step into doing something new and making some changes. And I think our culture does reward kind of that pain and like staying up all night to pass an exam. And then I love brain chemistry and just what that does to your brain to be rewarded for staying up all night to pass an exam. It's kind of like that becomes a little bit more okay. And then you do it again and it's a little more okay. And our reward system, becomes conditioned to these things that really are unhealthy for our spiritual and emotional well-being. So it sounds like you just got to a place where the pain outweighed the fear or doubt or not knowing what to do next, but you knew you had to start doing some things. And yoga being kind of that doorway into all that you do now.
Yes. Yeah. The yoga, which led to the energy work. When I work with energy, it's the first time that I wasn't bored.
Oh, cool.
It was, and it's the one thing that there's no end to it of the depths that you can when you're working in such a multidimensional world as energy is and intuition, and mix that with people, and the sky's the limit. There's no limit. Similar to yoga, there's like if you do yoga, it's like you're never going to master yoga. There's always new depths to take it.
There are.
Whereas foreclosing on homes, there is a limit.
Yeah, absolutely. So will you talk to us about, because I know you have coming up in September, the next Feng Shui online certification program and what that's about, how people can, register and what, how you're helping with offering this.
Yeah. So my part of my mission is to bring this work into as many homes as possible, and to do that is to teach people what I do and to kind of train more people to bring this work into the world, and it's working amazingly. I see results from my students and them working with clients, and a lot of my students are some are already in the holistic field, and this is just another tool in their toolbox. I also have interior designers or people in the real estate professions integrating the feng shui into their existing practices. And I think it's just a sign of the times that we're in and leading more and more into, and that the 3D one-dimensional world, or 3D-dimensional world is not satisfying enough. There's a yearning to go deeper in all aspects of one's work and in one's life and relationships and in all ways. And so merging this aspect of energy into spaces, whether it's a restaurant design or whatever, a home design or selling a home, is becoming integral. And so that's kind of why I started the teaching, more teaching than anything with this work. And my next course, I have an online. I do sometimes have them in person. Don't have any in-person ones scheduled for the rest of the year. But my next online one is over 12 weeks, starts September 26th. So registration is in full swing with that. And all you need is an internet connection. And it's a lot of fun.
And that's through your website, earthhome.tv, correct? For people to get more information about the certification course coming up. Okay, cool. And so I also wanted to know more about the way you give back, fengshuifortheplanet.org. We were speaking a little about that before coming live. Can you tell us about this?
Absolutely. This is, the direction I'm wanting to ultimately take this work in, and bringing feng shui, and I'm using the term very loosely, really just creating better living spaces for the world, and bringing this into, orphanages, other nonprofit spaces. I was actually just at a talk a couple of weeks ago, talking about feng shui in the workplace. And there was a gal who raised her hand and said, what do I do? I work for a nonprofit, and we were given all this office furniture, and it's really not very functional. What do you do? And I was like, this is why Feng Shui the Planet is going to help other nonprofits, help those that are, on the streets doing, or in the field doing the work, and really making their office spaces more functional and more pleasing to be in. So this is ultimately where I want to take this, and really creating better living spaces for a better world is really the tagline there. So much more to come.
I think that's great. When did you start this? How did this come to you? This has been percolating for several years, and the 501c3 is coming very soon. It's just, I don't even know how it came about. I probably have to go back in all my journals and look back, but it really is at the core of my heart and the work, for sure. And I like to ask every guest at the end what it is that you want to leave. What is it that is important for you, like, practical life all aside. So I'm curious for you, Tisha, what that is.
Nice. Well, I always tell people, leave a space better than how you found it. So when you're moving from a space, leave it in a better, whether it's renovation or gardening that you did, or just clean, or taking your energy back, leaving a space better than how you found it. And then I would actually use that same principle on a bigger level, leaving the world better than you found it. And whatever your medicine is to do that through, mine is working with spaces. So that is my goal. Yeah.
And I'm hearing today, when you say working with spaces, you're working with so much more than just one's physical environment of home or work. You're working with their psyche, their soul, their spirit, like helping them feel less cluttered and fragmented.
Absolutely, and it's there's a three prongs to this. It's the people, the places, and the planet that are really, when you work with one, all of them get enhanced. So if I work with spaces, the people who occupy them get the benefit as the planet. You work with the planet, the land, the people. It all is so related. So it's the people, the places, and the planet all in one.
So we're so interconnected, which goes back to when you were talking about feng shui and the oneness of everything. And Taoism, the oneness of everything,
Absolutely.
I think is what you were saying, and specifically.
Absolutely.
Well, before I thank you for being on, for our listeners, we were talking this week also about doing another show in November having to do with feng shui and the holidays, which I'm pretty excited about.
Yeah, that's going to be a lot of fun. I can get a little more practical in my tips with clearing out the clutter to get the holiday decorations in full swing.
And how that came to me as we were talking this week is during the holidays, Thanksgiving and Christmas in particular, and my experience is it's such a busy time in my practice. People are really anxious, often fearful, often not looking forward, to the holidays for so many different reasons. Be it, it brings up the memory of a deceased loved one or family members you might not have seen or spoken to or don't want to for all kinds of reasons, financial concerns. It's just such a stressful time. And so I was just started to wonder, how can feng shui help people, during this stressful time? So I can't wait to talk more about this with you.
That sounds fabulous and very needed. So perfect.
Thank you, Tisha, for being my guest today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it and really enjoyed it.
You're welcome. And we'll talk soon.
All right. Bye.
Okay. Bye. That concludes today's show with Tisha Morris of earthhome.tv. Join me next week as I have on for a third time astrologer and clairvoyant artist Amadeus talking to us about patterns of the cosmos that empower her clients, that empower us to be more authentic and live in a more connected way, to have ease and some easiness on our life path. I hope everyone has a great week. Bye-bye.
You're listening to All Things Therapy with Lisa Tahir.